So I just finished listening to the entire Hunger Games saga after Haymitch's story came out, Sunrise and the Reaping, because I wanted to go back and listen to everything in consecutive order and kind of pick up on details and correlations because there's 40 years between President Snow's story of the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes at the 10th Hunger Games to Haymitch's story, Sunrise on the Reaping, at the 50th Hunger Games, the second quarter quell. And then 25 years between that and the first Hunger Games for Katniss at the 74th. And then they have the 75th, the third quarter quell, and then the rebellion in the year after, or half a year. It's kind of hard to tell the timeline exactly, but this whole the whole series is like a brilliant portrayal of complex trauma. Because even Snow, who obviously becomes irrevocably evil, is traumatized. And if I remember right, because I was thinking he could be a sociopath or a psychopath, but if I remember right, psychopath is the one that develops from decisions that are made versus sociopath, which may be what someone is born with, like a disorder that someone is born with. But the series is brilliant because you can see everything playing out. So with Coriolanus Snow, he's a traumatized kid who's lost his parents and lives with his cousin who's lost her parents. And they've seen horrific things in the war as very young children. And he's scared about where food's going to come from, and holding up the family expectations and history. But he's so dialed into how his actions are going to appear. And so there's a coldness that you can tell even from the beginning, where it's all about how something looks versus him being connected to his actual feelings and other people's actual feelings. And so it's really amazing to kind of get an insight into his mind and early experience. And then with Haymitch, man, so brutal. The loss over and over and over and over again that he experiences. It is no wonder that he just ends up trying to drown himself in alcohol throughout his life. And then Katniss is super traumatized early on by the loss of her dad and by the reality of the reapings that she attends over and over, and the fact that she doesn't want to lose any more of her family. And so even before her sister gets called in the first reaping that we witness, she has experienced early childhood trauma by losing her both caretakers. She lost her dad to death and her mom to grief. And her mom has her own reaction to trauma, which Katniss is very harsh toward. But as we know from trauma, the conscious mind, the conscious part of the person doesn't necessarily get to choose their response to trauma. So even though she was a mother with two young girls, Katniss's mom just shut down in her grief and her trauma of losing her husband, because she lost one of her best friends 25 years earlier. Would have been not quite that long, but 20 some years earlier, um, at the same time that Haymitch went into the Hunger Games, because her best friend was also with him there, one of her best friends. So she's already experienced trauma. Then she lost the friendship with Haymitch when he was in his trauma after the games and rejected all help of any kind, partly for their safety, because everyone that he loved was targeted and killed. So, yeah, just all kinds of complex, compound trauma within the whole community. So then, yeah, Katniss has lost her dad, lost her mom, had to become the caretaker of everyone, her mom and her sister, and then the trauma of the first Hunger Games, and she's just in survival mode, which is why she doesn't pick up on the fact that Gale loves her, the fact that Peeta loves her or is like a genuinely good person. And so like throughout the Hunger Games, it's easy to kind of despise her for her cold calculations, but she is in survival mode actively. And so like she can't see Peeta for who he is, and that he's a genuinely good person that genuinely cares. And she's always thinking that it's a strategy the whole time. So then they do what they need to do to survive, and then it makes sense in Catching Fire that she's avoiding everybody, avoiding facing reality, avoiding really connecting with Gale, avoiding connecting with Peeta. And then all of a sudden she has to go back in, and that's like extremely terrifying, extremely traumatizing, re-traumatizing. And she doesn't, it takes her a while to think of everyone else, and that's like totally understandable. Like her nervous system is going on autopilot, and so it takes her a little while to calm down, and then for her conscious mind to realize, wait, I'm not the only one affected by this, and to start thinking of others. So then there's that whole trauma again, going through the whole same experience, losing, I'm forgetting the stylist's name, but Cinna, that's right. For some reason, I'm feeling like that's wrong, but yeah, just over and over and over again, brutal, brutal, brutal. And then I loved at the end. There's that little insight about Coin being very similar to Snow, and I think that was essential, that Coin was killed, because they would have ended up in kind of a same type of government. But I loved the ending. It's very, very short, but just the description of her kind of coming out of the trauma coma and starting to feel things, reconnecting with Prim's cat, and then the way PETA was just caring for her, bringing evening primrose plants to surround the house with, and just bringing bread over. And then the way that they started making that book together, where she would recall memories and PETA would illustrate it, and just recalling everything as much as they could. And then the little game that she started to play with herself of every time the horrors started coming back and the overwhelm, she chose to list in her mind all the things that she could remember that were good, the people that were good, the people that did good things, the good that was in the world. And she called it a silly little game of remembering positive things. But it helped her come out of the darkness little by little by little by little, because healing is sometimes so painfully slow. And then the children that she eventually had and loved, and kind of learned with PETA how to relay why she had trauma and why she had episodes. So I don't know. I just finished the book and didn't want to move on without recording some reflections on the brilliance of relaying that trauma experience, how trauma happens, and how we can deal with it, understand it, have compassion on it, and then engage in a slow and persistent journey of healing.